Wednesday, May 25th, 2022. I'm watching the GMA, What You Need to Know. Of course, today it's the day after this mass shooting. It's not the first time it's happened in the United States. But this is the Uvalde mayor speaking out, it says, on deadly school shooting. It's between the actual reporter who's in the field and the man from Texas. I forget when I listen to them speak of Texas, like the people of Texas, it's like their state is like comes first, and then it's they're about state and country. And I get that. My state operates slightly differently. In fact, I think a lot differently. And, like, again, I want to have that, like, yay, but I don't have a single representative I've seen speak on the state of New York that I can, like, really get behind and go, no, like, this is one of the good ones. I haven't seen it. Not the way New York has been run since I arrived in 1978. We had Rudy Giuliani at one point. There, I could say yes. But he's been gone for a long time now, and it's just been steadily going down the hill. So now he's talking, and I'm going to let him speak. But he goes into this now, because now there's a crisis with the shooting. It's the second one. So this is like some kind of platform, I feel. Not necessarily for him, because I'm having a conversation between myself and the man on the TV, because I can't get to him as a mayor. And then they go to Abbott, Governor Abbott talking. His lieutenant governor is there. They have a really strong front, it looks like. And then there's, unlike I have in New York, and then there's this citizen or civilian or, I don't know, part of the public who gets up, who tries to speak because he's upset. And he's not with his fists, he's not with his finger, he's not yelling. I mean, honestly, for me, he looks like a member of a congregation, like a quiet congregation, like I grew up with, who just, in their peaceful, passive way, want to be heard and have their voice put on record and not be silenced even by their own people. Because what I saw immediately was the lieutenant governor, or whoever was over the shoulder of the lieutenant governor, tried to silence this man. Now I know nothing about this place. And in fact, he then goes outside to speak outside this John H. Harrell, Harrell auditorium. And again, I don't know the area. I had to look it up just to see how their community was built. Which again, in this area, I'm not as lucky as they are. But he's speaking on this thing, mental health. Now, I hear the media throw it up a lot. What's more concerning for me is the end products that they are putting in the packaged foods. Sometimes they say the word enzymes, sometimes they say the word whatever. Again, I have no affiliations whatsoever. So for me, I can read the labels, the preservatives, the whatever. And from the schooling that I've sought out in the field, just enough to get the verbal cues that they use for like a public or private, public, concerned person who has children. If the mental capacity has been on the decline, the first place I would check is the food, water, and then air quality. So if the food is being tampered with and it's causing mental capacity diminishing, which means that then it's frightening for future generations, not only what's here now, but for planning for future, because it feels, especially with other things that I had go on in a face-to-face, whatever, denial of services, it looks like causing these neural plaques or these neural like entanglement, or what they're calling entanglements within the frontal lobe or within the cognitive ability, allegedly, because these are all like made up words to describe a function or a sensation somebody might be feeling that causes a symptom that then causes some form of disease that then they can label, and now they have something they can work with in negotiations for whatever. But the thing is that the construct of it going under this mental disease, right now I'm not comfortable with it, because all I see is them wanting to push placebo pills, really, and different more chemicals into the field to try to like clear the mind, clear the food. Stop putting these processed chemicals and preservatives and enzymes as end products into the food that are feeding what's already here and what the children and the pregnant moms and so on and so forth. I mean, they're polluting the population, so then it's almost like the population doesn't even have to be looked at or addressed, and it's just being like spoken for or spoken over. And by the looks of things, it's getting really frightening. And I don't know like how to address, like who do you address on that? Because in my area, there was no like solid community like these fortunate citizens have in Texas. I have a whole nother thing going on in New York, which is really frightening. But I don't know, again, where do you hand raise? Where do you start? Where do you begin? If your local area no longer looks like they give two hoots about you, and you've had people specifically reroute you into a dead end, I mean, where do you go for help at that point? So, this is what this looks like.
He doesn't even have a driver's license. Why is that access? Why should that access be available?
Well, look, I mean, again, everybody has a right to own a gun. I'm not against expanded background checks. I'm not. But everybody comes in and talks about immediately we want to do gun control. We want to sanction the gun lobbyists. We want to sanction this and we want to sanction that. But you know what? Why don't you politicians get off your butts and let's talk about mental health and let's do something for real once. We give millions of dollars to all these countries, and right now we're spending billions down here on the border. What if we took that money and built facilities where we could treat the people in our own country? We got homeless people on the streets.
Last thing I want is for somebody to say that I need to be stuck in a facility under the oppression of what's going on in New York. What needs to be done is food testing to make sure that the neurological contaminants and enzymes that mess with the like neural disruptors or neurotransmitter disruptors at the synapse level, acetylcholine, those kinds of things, are not interfered with, that diminishes the mental capacity and the drive and all sorts of different things.
That have mental problems. We have kids that have mental problems, especially coming out of the pandemic. And everybody touts their horn and wants to beat their drum, but nobody wants to address the core problem, and that's mental health.
Did I hear you say, though, you wouldn't be...
The problem is it's a tainted word. It's a tainted core project. It's a tainted, I mean, by the looks of what's showing up for management, it is a tainted process, and I don't want like everybody being called mental just as an excuse. I mean, because then this goes into more clinical researches and trials and whatnot. And if they're outdoor, it's one thing if there's help in that. But to build further hospital facilities and lock people away, I mean, that's what they were doing in the 30s and 40s, and it was not acceptable.
Or you would be open to restrictions of some sort?
I'm not, I mean, as far as restrictions, no, I'm not going to say I'd be in favor of restrictions.
What about having a license, a gun license?
You know, that would be something that'll have to be, I'm not going to, you know, to me, I'm a responsible gun owner, so I mean, if you want to make me have a license, fine. I don't have anything to hide. But look, a license isn't going to change this. A license wouldn't have changed this. If a bad guy wants to get a gun, he's going to get a gun. It's proven over and over again. Look at Chicago. I mean, they get guns all over. You can't even buy a gun in the city of Chicago, but yet they have shootings every weekend. So, I mean, bad guys can get guns. You want to do an expanded background check? I'm all for it. I have no problem.
How can people watching who want to help the people in...
Now, this is strange. Like, I've never been to something like this, never been invited to something like this, never had it disrupted in this manner. Again, I don't know where things like this take place, where one finds things like this that take place, but this, whatever, in this area, or where I was in Long Island, doesn't happen.
And at this time, I will pass the mic to Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me.
Sit down. You're out of line and an embarrassment. Sit down.
Shooting is right now, and you're doing nothing.
No, he needs to get his ass out of here. This isn't the place to talk this over.
This is totally predictable. When you,
Sir, you're out of line. Sir, you're out of line. Sir, you're out of line. Please leave this auditorium. I can't believe you're a sick son of a bitch that would come to a deal like this to make a political issue. It's on assholes like you. Why don't you get out of here?
Is this part of the process that works? Because it looks really chaotic. Looks like there's a lot of screaming that goes on. Looks like nothing got accomplished. Look like a whole lot of accusations. This gets really confusing. But again, I don't know. I mean, that happens in Texas. I have, and it might happen in New York. I haven't seen it. Again, there's some of the process that's been, like, this whole voting thing. I don't know what a primary, a gubernatorial now they were mentioning. I mean, the TV doesn't run these words, so it's hard. And then it's like, when do you need to tune in? When does this happen? No mailings are coming through to the house. There's no, like, town hall going on in the local area, at least that we're invited to. So it almost feels like it's like this search for, like, how are the other people participating in this democracy and republic for which everybody's standing? Because I'm looking and there's pieces that other people are partaking in that I don't have access to, and it's kind of hard because I'm like, now is that supposed to be everybody's supposed to have this gubernatorial thing and this primary thing, and I don't know what the difference of the general election is. Like, who's supposed to teach that level of stuff? And then this is, he removed himself from the auditorium where the dais was and where they were speaking, and then he speaks outside to the audience.
speak following a very heated exchange between Governor Abbott and former Texas Congressman Beto O'Rourke. He has left the auditorium. He was asked to leave the auditorium by the governor, and he's now speaking to cameras now, so let's take a listen.
Greg Abbott in the state of Texas is the county jail system in the state of Texas. The largest inpatient mental health care facility in the state of Texas is the Harris County Jail in downtown Houston, Texas. He's refused to expand Medicaid, which would bring $10 billion a year, including mental health care access for people who need it. He's refused to champion red flag laws. When somebody says that they are having trouble, they may kill somebody.
Like, this is where the disconnect is between the headlines, the campaigns for the people elected, the lobbyist and whatever their agenda is, and then what, and there's such a cognitive dissonance amongst the whole process. It's like you get lost in the sea of, like, now wait a minute, is he talking about, like, the here and now? Because there are scary things like prisons, and there are scary people with guns, and there are scary killings, like, I know that exist. But then there's, like, larger conversation about acronyms and semantics and syntax with brass tacks. And, like, I'm like, now, how do you ever translate properly? And then, like, why, I mean, does nothing ever get done? Because it's spoken of in such a codex way, and you never know where it's coming from or what it's going to, like, turn into.
They may kill themselves. A red flag law would protect the public. He's refused to support safe.
And again, in New York, I don't know what a red flag law is. Like, who are the representatives, like, in charge and responsible for teaching the citizens and the civilians who want to take part in some form of civics, but have been left out or, like, derailed or dead-ended and didn't even know it? And like, now I'm trying, but it's like I didn't even know that they took all these things away. That, I mean, I'm looking to see what other pieces of the puzzle within the lower 48 are doing, to see how it should be behaving or how others are doing it for broken pieces of this puzzle. But I can already see how disconnected New York has become. They're not even running it like Texas. I mean, there's no hand to hold, there's no conversation to be had, there's no one-on-one, there's no one inside of a community. Like, there's none of that. I don't know who's running it or who took it over, but it's not like a fair democracy. I mean, it's being run by deceptive practices. It absolutely is.
Laws, so young people cannot get their hands on their parents' guns. He's refused to support a ban on AR-15s and AK-47s. This 18-year-old who just turned 18 bought an AR-15 and took it into an elementary school and shot.
And again, he's gonna go on, which I don't want to listen to. But, like, that's part of a process that, I mean, is now televised, but I don't see that being handled or going on in New York. And if it is, they sure haven't invited myself or my family into it, so we can keep on top of our own rights and protect our own civic rights and perform in some civic duty way. I mean, that's been withheld. How does one chase where to find out how to re-engage and how to perform properly when there's no, like, base knowledge given? It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxy is broken. It's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.